Welcome to Codex, History of Video Games. I'm Mike Coletta. I almost said my name is Michael for some reason.
Well, my name is Tyler Saurus Rex. I tried to make up like
Rex?
Tyler is my full name. There's no more to it than just Tyler.
I don't mind Tyler Saurus Rex, if I'm being completely honest. In fact, I like that a lot. So.
I'm Tyler Saurus Rex.
It's gonna be a weird one today, folks. My voice is going. I'm drinking tea now instead. If you're live, you could live. If you're on the video, you could see me drinking tea.
Like nobody's live. Today we wanted to talk about the Xbox 360 because last week the store shut down on the Xbox 360. You can no longer buy DLC. You can't go on and buy games. You can't do anything on the store. Xbox Online still works. And as far as I know, all of the games that are available for backward compatibility on Xbox One, you can still buy them. You can still buy things for them on an Xbox One. But the Xbox 360 store experience, gone, which, sort of signifies the end of an era, almost 20 years.
It was a beautiful era, man. It makes me like, this is kind of just an in memoriam episode, really. Like
a little bit, yeah.
If we had Vitamin C's The Graduation Song on our soundboard, we'd be playing it right now.
That's true. And if we had the rights to it.
And if we had the rights to it, we'd be doing that too.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. They probably make a lot of money off of that song. I bet the rights to that song are not cheap.
I like to think that every single middle school graduation has to pay Vitamin C $10 every time they play that song. That's probably not the case, but that's probably what it is.
Well, about 5 years ago, we did an episode on the Xbox 360 because we've been doing this podcast for more than 5 years now.
Wow.
But I think it's kind of okay if we give it a little bit of another send off here. We can talk about our memories of it and do like a small little history here. But we have covered this in the past, so feel free to go back and give that a listen. But I think, in my mind, modern gaming starts with the Xbox 360.
Could not agree more.
The world that we're in right now, you can very easily and directly trace back to the Xbox 360. I can't believe that it was nearly 20 years ago that it like just kind of busted out onto the scene.
I distinctly remember this.
Me too.
It's very much in my head. I was like just getting into college when this was happening, and it was a big moment in history.
Yeah, I was I was a couple years behind you then because I was in high school. This was the console that came out after I came online as a human. You know what I mean? Like I had a GameCube. And I think I got my PS2 a little bit later, but I had like a GameCube and I had Nintendo 64 and I played those things. But when this console came out, that was when I was like, I was old enough to like understand marketing and like to understand what they were trying to do and like to get excited about it. And I was only a couple of years away from like having a job to being able to buy this thing. Because at this point in my life, my parents were not buying me video games. They weren't doing it.
Upsetting, if you ask me.
Mostly because I played a lot of games, I think. And I think my mom disputes that that's why they stopped buying me video games, but I know the truth.
You know the truth. That's a conspiracy.
Yeah. So, obviously every console has contributed to gaming in a significant way. I'm not trying to say the Xbox 360 is like the most important or anything like that. Although if we wanted to have an argument, we could argue it. But I think the Xbox 360 is a very clear line in the sand of like gaming before that and after that. And I think the biggest thing that they added to it was this connectivity and like social aspect to it. That's when gaming changed from a thing that nerds did by themselves, or maybe with their friends in a basement, to a thing you can do online with your friends, and be social and like be a cool kid, I guess. Not to say that online. I know Xbox 360 didn't invent online gaming. I'm not trying to claim that, but it did.
No. I 100% agree with you, and I know what you're saying because I have a theory, okay? And this might be a little out there. I think that Xbox 360 online games, and specifically Call of Duty Modern Warfare, came out at the perfect time for guys like me that were done with high school sports and in college or wanting to hang out with people and still play something competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And like that gave me and my friends like a competitive game outlet,
Yeah.
Like, I feel like at Call of Duty Modern Warfare and Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 and Black Ops, those games took a spot that playing pickup sports almost took for some people. You know what I mean? Like it kind of like was the pickup basketball or pickup football for a lot of people that were growing up in my era of playing sports and also playing video games. It was like a combo, because I don't want to like thread people into a jock versus nerd like old school mindset, because I think that's very old school and it does not apply to the modern day. But for kids like me, who we were like the first ones playing a lot of video games and playing sports, this was a social activity. And
you are the missing link. You are the transitionary fossil. I called you a fossil because you're older than me.
I am a fossil, though. You're not wrong. If you could put me in one of those machines in Pokemon Red, and I would pop out. Like that's actually like a thing, though, that I think it was like our generation was perfect for that, and the social aspect, sending messages, having parties with friends. That's what made Xbox Live and take us to the modern era, because now you and I jump on Discord with our friends.
Yep.
We're not just playing one game. We're staying in the same group and we're jumping between different games. And Xbox 360's online system is what allowed people to do that. We'd play Call of Duty, and then we'd play that Trials game, the motorcycle game, and then we'd jump into Minecraft. Like that was a little later on in time, but that was like the thing. It started this social aspect. And I was listening to a thing recently about how they talk about how whatever like generation we're on right now. I think it's alpha
is what the kids are now, I think.
That generation and Xbox is like Microsoft and Sony are noticing this, is platform agnostic. They do not care what platform they're playing on. And I think that's just a natural progression to what Xbox 360 started, but being on that platform, but switching between games. Now we're switching between consoles. People are playing on mobile. It's a beautiful thing. The world is changing for in a beautiful way, everyone. Sorry, that was my soapbox moment as a fossil.
No, you're totally right there. And I like previously, because like again, 360 didn't invent online gaming. I know PC players, you've been online gaming since the 60s or whatever. And like the original Xbox had Xbox Live, right? But prior to the Xbox 360 and Xbox Live, I suppose, sort of did some of this stuff as well. Gaming online was very separate, like you were saying. Every game, you had to make your own account for every single game. You went by a different name for every single game. You had a different friends list, if your game even had a friends list, right? And then when Xbox Live came out with the original Xbox, they sort of unified a lot of that. You got one online name that you went by your gamer tag. You had one unified friends list, but the games still felt separate. They all require, like the games themselves had to sort of interface with Xbox Live. So when you were looking at your friends list, you weren't looking at like the Xbox friends list. You were looking at your Xbox friends list from Halo. Or from Fable, which was not a multiplayer game, but did have Xbox Live capabilities and would tell you when you were online, when your friends were online, and you could send messages and stuff. I think
I can't think of anything more annoying now than when you jump into a game that's like that. When it's like, oh no, you have a separate friend list for the game. I'm like, what are you even doing?
Yeah,
it's 2024, my dude. Okay, let's figure this out.
It's tough on PC too, because there's there are a few different ecosystems like this that are trying to be the Xbox Live, and like really it's just Steam, but like, you know, EA's got their thing, Ubisoft's got their thing, and like, okay, now we have separate friends lists. All my Ubisoft games have the same friends list, and all my EA games have the same friends list, and then all my Steam games, which is where I normally play games, have the same friends list. But
nothing bums me out more than when I open a game and it opens up EA Play or Ubisoft's thing, and I'm like, why are we even doing this? Why do we? I know you're making it so I have to go through this, but why?
Yeah, it's a real bummer. Oh wait, Epic Games Store has its own friends list now. But yeah, I think that's like one of that is probably the biggest thing that the Xbox 360 did, and the PlayStation 3 took some time to catch up there. A lot of those games you talked about, the Calls of Duty, and those games, like those were also on PlayStation 3. But the that ecosystem just wasn't quite there. And when the PlayStation Network came out with PS3, they did, to their credit, they did do the unified friends list. They did, you know, unified screen name, that kind of stuff. Like they did a lot of the same stuff that Xbox was doing, but they didn't have that party chat. Was that in at launch, the party chat for Xbox? I feel like that came later.
I think it came later. I'm not entirely certain, but it came later, because I personally got in on this late. Like I would go to friends' houses and play their Xbox 360s before I bought my own online. And then I was finally like, I got to get my own. This is amazing. And that's
when I finally got mine.
Yeah, I would, because I would go to my buddy's house in college. They had this really rundown house that they lived in, and I would go with them in college and go hang out at their place, and we just pass the controller around playing Call of Duty. And then eventually we're like, we could all play this together. And then we all bought 360s, and then we all jumped in together. That was but I remember party chat always being there. So I think that I got in late.
Yeah, I want to say that it came with the dashboard update that came out in like 2008. I think that's when they introduced party chat, when they really doubled down on this Xbox Live connectivity stuff. but yeah, they did that. They did the unified marketplace as well, because the Xbox Live on the original Xbox, there were some games that would let you like buy DLC. Like I think you could buy Halo maps, but again, you had to do it from within Halo. There was a lot of free DLC for things like Splinter Cell. Like developers hadn't quite figured out what they could sell here and what they could get away with. And then the Xbox 360 made that marketplace like a unified place where you could just go into the store, like walking into Target and be like, oh, I want to get something for my Splinter Cell game. I want to get the new Halo 3 map pack. I want to get this or that, the other thing. And they're in the Xbox interface. So you felt like you were in this ecosystem. You weren't buying maps from Halo, you were buying maps from Xbox, right?
Yeah.
Which felt pretty cool. And then there's a huge argument to be made that like the mess that we're in regarding microtransactions today that most people are not super happy with, it started like with the Xbox 360. That's it.
Yeah.
Horse armor is the original thing. They sold it for $5 for Oblivion. It didn't do anything but make your horse look cool. Everybody like me was like, who would buy this? Why would you spend money on this?
But a lot of people
But
did.
apparently a lot of people did. And then and now it's entire games are held up by this, just like buying stuff that doesn't make a difference in game, that just makes you look different. You know, it's where most of my paycheck comes from. So
yeah, you know, it's where it's.
I guess I was
Tyler
wrong.
afloat.
Yeah, I guess I was wrong. It keeps my house hot, but yeah, it was just like such a pivotal moment in gaming. We talk a little bit about the hardware here, I think, because I think the Xbox 360, having come out a year early compared to the rest of the generation, the Wii and the PlayStation 3. PlayStation 3 was its main competition. The Wii is really when Nintendo decided, you know what, we're going to go off in our own little world here and like do a different thing, which turned out to be very successful for them. But the Xbox and PlayStation 3 competed directly against each other. And I think the Xbox 360 did not have the advantage when it comes to hardware because it came out a year earlier. And it came out only 4 years after the original Xbox. Like how much progress can you make? You can actually make a lot in 4 years. In those days, at least. Today, you can't. Back in those days, like a 5-year console cycle, that was like normal, right? It was long if it took 5 years for a new console to come out. What did the N64 came out in 96, and then the GameCube came out in 2001.
Yeah.
So that's only 5 years. We are 4 years into the current console cycle, by the way, and PlayStation 5 still feels like a brand new thing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
In my mind, anyway. And maybe that's just getting older and like time just moves faster. But if we continue down this path of like a new Xbox every 4 years, we would be on the Xbox 7 right now, when we are currently on the Xbox 4. If you know this current generation is Xbox 4, I guess, right? So some speculate that early launch was because of the deal that Microsoft had with NVIDIA for their graphics chip in the original Xbox. That fell through, and they kind of wanted to be out of that deal. They wanted to be on to the next thing, and so they partnered with AMD. Well, they were ATI at the time, to make graphics in the new system. The other thing that the 360 did, which was a step back from the original Xbox, was that at launch, there was no hard drive guaranteed. They sold 2 SKUs at launch, one with a hard drive and one without a hard drive. So developers had to make their games assuming there would be no hard drive at the beginning, which was a step back because I think the hard drive was a big advantage that the original Xbox had for game development, just for like, because there were sections of that hard drive that developers were able to use to cache things, like make loading times faster and things like that, that their 360 could not do, which was a little bit of a bummer. They also sold
crazy that they had to like build. They're not going to use. Just assume there's no hard drive. It's nuts.
And it was and on the original Xbox, you could say you can assume there's a hard drive in here. Every single Xbox, regular Xbox, has a hard drive. So build with that hard drive in mind. And then it was like, just kidding, which is why the non-hard drive version of the 360 is not backward compatible with original Xbox games. You got to pick up that hard drive so you can download, so those games can use a hard drive. The other thing that the 360 did was standardize wireless controllers. Those were a thing that like third parties did in the previous generation. Nintendo did have its legendary Wavebird that they still maybe one of the best wireless controllers ever made.
Wavebird. I get nostalgic for a Wavebird.
We love the Wavebird, but it wasn't built into the GameCube, right? You had to get the little receiver. And I don't think Sony ever made an official wireless controller. Microsoft never made an official wireless controller for their console in that generation. There were some third-party things that you could get that were like of varying levels of quality, but the 360 standardized that wireless controllers were a thing. The core system, that one that didn't come with a hard drive, did come with a wired controller, but everything else was wireless. And it was like pretty cool that it was a wireless controller because that was, again, not standard at the time. The hardware was super different from the original Xbox, though. It had a triple core PowerPC based processor that ran 2 threads. So you kind of had 6 simultaneous threads going on at a time, which was a huge step up from the original Xbox of 1 Celeron core, 1 thread. That's it. Interesting that they went with the PowerPC architecture because that is what powered Macs at the time. In fact, some of the early development kits were just Power Mac G5s because that was like the closest thing. It's basically like a triple core G5 inside the 360. I'm sure that's oversimplifying it pretty heavily, but they also had a custom graphics GPU provided by ATI called Xenos, which introduced a unified shader model to the world. PC graphics cards coming out soon after this would also have this unified shader model feature of the graphics card. I'm no GPUologist, but that sort of starts the some of the modern GPU stuff that we have going on today as well.
I thought you were a GPUologist. This whole
I'm
time.
not. I did not finish that degree.
Wow.
Yeah. I got a theater degree instead, which
whoops. Ooh, whoopsie doodle.
The other thing that the 360 had that was a step down from its most of its competition was it continued with the DVD drive. They did not go to Blu-ray. They didn't go to HD DVD. It was a little early for that at the time in 2005, late 2005. And then, of course, the console was being designed even before that. And I think you could say that was a mistake, sticking with that same DVD technology from the OG Xbox. But there was still some growing room there because they were dual-layer DVDs, which the original Xbox supported. But most games were not dual-layer games. They used a single layer of the DVD. That, like I think Conquer Live and Reloaded was a dual-layer game. There's a few dual-layer games, but that was rare. So there was still some room to grow on the storage medium for the Xbox 360 when it came out. With those 2 layers, but it wasn't anything like the 50 gigs that you would get if you were making a PS3 game. And in fact, there were a lot of games, especially later in the console's lifespan, where the 360 version would come with 2 or 3 discs, and the PlayStation 3 version would all be on 1 disc. I don't think there are any PlayStation 3 games that are on more than 1 disc.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they're all 1 disc, right? Because it's like the Blu-ray's so big at that time.
Yeah, but 360 games towards the end, they would come 2-3 discs at a time. And then they could also, towards the end, they could require a hard drive as well because every 360 had a hard drive by the end.
Have we done an episode on the great HD DVD versus Blu-ray debacle?
I don't think so, because it's not like directly related to gaming. It's more of a movie thing. But I mean, if people are interested, I love that kind of stuff.
I love that thing too.
Format war.
I love it was quite the format war between Xbox and PlayStation at the time too.
Yeah, and one could say maybe the last great format war because now everything is streaming digital, and it's just which provider are you buying it from, not the technology itself.
Provider wars way more boring than format wars. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, way more boring. But Microsoft did put out an HD DVD peripheral for the Xbox 360. It did not play games. Developers could not put games on it. You couldn't even play a game off of that drive if it were a DVD game, like a standard game. It just played movies. That's it. It was like too little, too late. It just played the movies. It was. I would love to have one for a collector's item, but there was really nothing there for that HD DVD thing. The original launch SKUs came with wired Ethernet ports, no wireless, which was fine at the time. 100 megabits of networking, that was fine. In 2005, probably most home internet connections were not really much faster than 10 megabits. So if you were maxing out the 100 megabits on your Xbox 360, you were really balling on your internet connection. And I would say you didn't need it for Xbox 360 things. Maybe you needed it for work, whatever. I don't care. But for Xbox 360 things, you didn't need 100 megabits. Okay, great. You would download your games faster. But at launch, you couldn't download games. It would have just been for online. So, wireless would come later as a USB expansion. And then in the slim consoles, it would be built in.
I think I have that wireless expander thing.
Yeah, it's cool.
Cool.
You can kind of move it around because it's it attaches.
Snaps in.
Yeah. But the PlayStation 3, its higher model on launch did have wireless. The 20 gigabyte model, the cheaper one, which was still $100 more than the more expensive Xbox, did not have Wi-Fi as far as I know. Pretty sure that's the only model of PlayStation 3 that didn't have Wi-Fi. But yeah, that's the other thing that PlayStation did. It came out a year later, and its cheap version was $100 more than the expensive version of the Xbox 360, which I think worked out in Microsoft's favor because it allowed them to really get that foothold in early when the advantages that the PlayStation 3 had would not really show up until later in this console generation. Like it wouldn't matter, right? And by then, people had already sort of locked in their Xbox 360. I do think the PlayStation 3 eventually outsold the 360. Is that correct? I think eventually by the end it did.
That sounds right. But
Because Sony stumbled at the start of that gen, but they really got it together by the end. And
because
Microsoft,
in the end, that's kind of when all those console exclusives were like really going, and everyone
yep,
was like, "Whoa, look at all these games coming out on PlayStation."
yeah, you started getting your like Last of Us. Remember that was a PlayStation 3 game, that first Last of
Mm-hmm.
Us, and that's like really kicked off this these exclusives that Sony had. That like, hey man, at the end of the day, what do we always say? Gotta have games.
Gotta have games. Gotta have games.
You gotta have games. The 360 did have a proprietary memory card port. Remember on the fat ones?
Oh yeah, it did.
Did you ever know anybody who bought a memory card for their 360?
I didn't, but I'm looking at mine, and I think I have the memory card slots on
You
mine.
definitely do. If it's not a slim model, it has a memory
Yeah,
card
it's got
slot.
the memory card slots. I'm looking
Yeah.
at it. I've never bought them though. I just use
Yeah.
the internal memory.
It's so funny. Like, I mean, it makes sense when you're going to sell a core system that doesn't have a hard drive. Like you need to give people a way to save their games. So like, okay, sure, do memory cards. What I find interesting about that is that they
I can
develop.
actually do a visual aid. You keep talking. I'll be right back.
What I find interesting about that memory card port is that USB flash drives did exist in 2005. You could get a USB flash drive, and they weren't overly expensive. They certainly didn't cost more than the memory card thing cost. But at the start of the 360 life cycle, you couldn't use USB memory cards to store your save games. There it is.
These are the memory card slots, right?
Yep.
That's them right there.
Literally nobody bought them.
I have never even opened that. That's the first time ever I've poked that. And I've owned this console since 2008.
Yeah. Nobody.
First time ever poking this.
I think it might be an example of just like multiple groups working on a thing, and the memory card group goes, well, we better develop a memory card. They go, oh, we're not putting a hard drive in this one. Well, we better develop a memory card system for it, because back in those days, every console had its own memory card system. There was no they didn't standardize anything between them, mostly because
looking in the port, it looks like oops, I just bumped my microphone. It looks like a fat version of an SD card.
Yeah,
like that's what the plug-in looks like.
Yeah, the memory card was like kind of chunky, and I would imagine that it's literally just a USB, like technology-wise, it's just USB flash memory.
Yeah,
but they
I have
sold
my
it.
old Xbox 360, and I keep it here because it's just a piece. I keep it on the shelf. It's not plugged into anything. There's no cords in the back of it. I just keep it on the shelf because I just like the look of it.
Yeah, I have too many of them. You should have took one with you when you one of my modded ones with you.
I should have done that.
I have too many of them. I need to get rid of them.
I'll be back.
Great. But yeah, the memory card thing was just so funny to me. And then they figured out at a certain point, I want to say when that new dashboard dropped, the 2008 new Xbox experience, when they got rid of the blades, I want to say that's when like USB storage devices became, you could just save games onto those if you wanted to. And thus making memory cards redundant and not useful. But they could have done that from the beginning, because that's just a software thing. And like I said, flash drives existed in 2005. They were more expensive and didn't hold as much, but like for memory card purposes, they would have been fine, right? Like a 64 megabyte flash drive would have saved your games for you.
Yeah, that would have been fine.
Yeah, or you could have used a USB hard drive too, which
that's the crazy part about this too, is I'm looking at this thing. This is the hard drive.
Yeah.
And that it's just so weird to me that it had its own proprietary, like this, because couldn't you on a PS3 actually upgrade the hard drive?
Yeah, it was supported. It was just a laptop hard drive, SATA laptop hard drive. You could just pop the old one out, pop a new one in.
Couldn't do it on this bad boy.
Not the case. Yeah, you could. They sold bigger hard drives, and there were like hacked ways to do it. I did one of those. I got like a bigger hard drive into one of that enclosure, because they are still technically like just SATA hard drives. Like they are standard hard drives. Just that connector is non-standard.
It's just this connector is not standard.
Yeah, so if you open that thing up, you'll just find a standard SATA laptop hard drive in there.
Yeah, actually, you can even see it through the little holes in there.
Yeah,
it's just SATA. It's funny.
And they continue doing that even with the Slim. I think it still has its own little. It's a different proprietary connector, but it is still a proprietary connector.
You know, I just love this thing so much. I'm never gonna sell it. It's my favorite. It's just so many good memories on my 360.
Yeah. Does yours have an HDMI port? That's what I want to talk about next. If it's got in 2008,
it does.
Yeah. The first batch, like for the first, I want to say until I think it was September of 2007, whenever the Xbox 360 Elite came out, they didn't have HDMI ports on them. There it is. And at launch, in fact, even over component cables, you couldn't do 1080p. You could only do 1080i. They did a software update that allowed 1080p over component cables, I think after the PlayStation 3 came out, because it did do 1080p. And then when the 360 Elite came out, that one, that its big feature was that it had an HDMI port on it, the black one, and had 120 gig hard drive. And then from there on, like even the lower end models had HDMI ports on them. So they got it together
for this console, man. I'm just looking at it. Like, I love it so much.
Yeah.
So many young, good memories on this console.
Yeah. What were some of your favorite games? You talked about the Calls of Duty. Were there any like exclusives that really that you thought made that system for you?
I didn't really play a lot of exclusives. I was really into the reason I bought the console initially was Fallout 3. That's why I actually bought the console. Is I bought it and I played Fallout 3 in college. A buddy of ours, Jared, sat with me while I played, and he guided me to find all the bobbleheads. So I got that achievement.
Nice.
That was really fun. I bought it for Call of Duty multiplayer. I mean, I guess I wouldn't call Minecraft an exclusive, but I ended up playing a lot of Minecraft on that. And then Mojang, was bought by Microsoft.
Yeah. Well, the game's still out on every platform.
I think the thing I remember the most is like, and I'm going to say something a little controversial. Trash talk on Xbox 360 was hilarious because there were people that would talk trash like in the game, obviously, and like flame, and those people were not very fun. But whoever at Microsoft decided to have the voice messaging feature, so funny, so good. Like just a perfect situation. Because there's a friend, my friend and I, Brian, still talk about a voice message he received in Call of Duty. Because I'm not proud of this. We were obnoxious. We would get a full stack of 6 people, 6 of our friends. We would play team deathmatch, and we'd all post up in a spot. So we'd be covering every angle.
That sounds just like good teamwork.
Yeah. So as the teams would come in, they'd run in one at a time. They'd Bruce Lee bad guy us, and we just take them out. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And this was so annoying to play against because we would win pretty easily, and we'd all get our kills, our kill strikes or whatever, like our kill streak things. And it was just really frustrating. My friend Brian got a voice message one time from a guy, and I am going to do it best because I still quote this regularly to him as we're playing games, where he says, the guy goes, "You guys are trash. Your KD's about to go way low." And that's what he said. And I still will say your KD's about to go way low to my friends when we're playing video games. And that was almost 15 years ago at this point. No, over 15 years ago, like 16 years ago at this point. Like
your KD's about to go way low.
Your KD's about to go way low. And it was just a guy that was really mad at us, but it was just so funny, his accent. And it was just, chef's kiss. And I'd get messages, people like, "You're hacking," all the time. And that was always funny, because I'm not. Like, I just play this game way too much.
That's the best when somebody says you're hacking and you're not. And you're just like, well, I guess I'm just so good.
I got one of those on Apex Legends like 3 or 4 years ago where someone was like, "Nice hacking reported." And I was like, I feel so good about myself right now. You have no idea. That compliment that you think I'm hacking because I shot you from so far away makes me so happy.
Yeah. Oh, man. You love to see it. And that's the era where it became, because like people would type, keyboard warriors would be out here typing, especially on PC, right? But there wasn't like a lot of voice chat stuff going on. PC had some patchwork things at the time, like, TeamSpeak and Mumble, and but you had to be really intentional about using voice chat in most games, whereas it just was built in standard when Microsoft did Xbox Live. Yeah, on the original Xbox even, like I think every game had to support voice chat.
Also, if someone sent you a text message and typed out a big long thing on Xbox, you're like, wow, they must be mad because that took them a while to type that out.
Or they had the cool chat pad.
Oh, yeah. Unless they had the chat pad, which I think is just so funny. You have the chat pad and you're using it to talk trash to people.
I know. I want one of those I wish you could use that on PC with an Xbox One controller. Because I think they made one of those for the Xbox One, a little chat pad. But I don't think it works on PC.
Oh, that would be
I would love that. But instead I have to use
instead of a keyboard
a
for
full
work.
keyboard like
You
a
just use an
barbarian.
Xbox controller for work. Just
Yep.
type out emails with that.
Yeah, that's what I do. I just type out my emails on my Xbox 360 controller for work.
Nice.
But yeah, there was also like Gears of War was, I think, a pretty influential
Oh yeah.
exclusive, especially before Halo 3 came out, because that's kind of what everybody was waiting for with the 360. They was like, okay, but when does Halo 3 come out? And Gears of War really filled that gap, I think. In a way, it filled the gap from a like I want to play an action game online with a competitive element. But what was so good about Gears of War was that it didn't replace Halo 3 in the sense that like they were different games, and so then Gears of War just sort of became its own series with its own set of fans that loved it, and it got 3 or 4 sequels on the Xbox 360, which is pretty sweet.
Stellar. I love
Yeah,
Gears of War. We played them all together. We love them.
yeah, yep. Gears of War games are great, but yeah, it's really for me. It's all about the Xbox Live that they did. Like they prototyped it on the original Xbox, like proved out like proof of concept, like, hey, this is a good idea to build an online thing with all of these features. And they did it maybe a little early on the original Xbox because they required a broadband connection. And not everybody, in fact, I want to say in 2002, most people did not have a broadband connection. It was still largely dial up. And so requiring a broadband connection, at least for me, remembering that for the original Xbox, as a person who was on dial-up for way too long, I remember being like, wow, this feature is like just not useful to me at all. And being kind of upset about that. But it turned out to be the right call because it allowed them to do voice chat. It allowed them to do downloadable content. It allowed them to do all of these things that was not really possible on dial-up internet. So, and then they were able to standardize them, right? Because they could have made that stuff optional. But then it wouldn't have been standardized. I think it would have moved forward a little bit more slowly.
Also, did we mention this? Something about Xbox that's kind of different than PlayStation. Xbox came with a headset with a voice.
That's true. Yeah, when you bought that
PlayStation did
Xbox
not.
Live starter pack on the original Xbox, came with a headset. I think if you bought the Pro, I want to say the core version of the original
Yeah,
of the
my
360 did not.
my 60 gig Pro that I'm holding here had a headset that came with it, and I thought that was so cool. And it was very basic,
Yep,
like I might have only been one headphone now that I think
it
about
was.
it.
Yeah,
And then it came down, but you could talk in it, and it made you feel really cool.
yeah,
Before the age of like buying the Turtle Beach headphones and everything, it was a big thing, and it was them encouraging you to play Xbox Live, and it worked. I mean, I did. I loved it.
yeah. And it let developers and players know that you could expect someone to have a headset, right? If somebody wasn't wearing their headset, it's probably because they chose not to. Because because every Xbox came with one, right? Or at least most of them. Maybe the Corsa version didn't, but if somebody wasn't on it, it wasn't like, oh, they didn't buy the headset. It's like, oh, they probably are choosing not to. And it just meant that 80-90% of the people you played with were talking, which was not the case on PlayStation. PlayStation 3 did support standard Bluetooth headsets, which were kind of becoming a bigger thing at the time for cell phones. So you could do that, but they didn't come with one. And I don't know if they ever had a wired version that like plugged into the controller the same way that 360 did. I think you could only do Bluetooth, and the quality on Bluetooth was like
Yeah, I
not
remember
great at
having
the
it.
time. Still not good,
I'm
but
going over to a friend's house, a comic's house, and he was playing on PlayStation. He was playing SOCOM on PlayStation, and he had a little phone headset on. And I'm like, "Are you getting a phone call?" He's like, "No, this is for my PlayStation." I'm like, "That's so weird to me." You know, like a little
yeah.
gaming.
Yeah, the PS2 did have a wired like USB headset that had like a 30-foot cord. I had one of those.
Yeah, it was. It
That
was.
one sounded okay.
I just thought that was really a really cool move by Microsoft to like say, hey, you know what, we're gonna provide this with this console. And then I mean, they gave me 3 free months of Xbox Live, I think, and I did it, and then I got hooked, and that was like, and also I I messed up. I did play a timed exclusive because Mass Effect was a timed exclusive.
Yeah.
So I did play Mass Effect on Xbox 360, but I missed Gears of War. And that's why we kind of played it like 3 or 4 years ago now. That's why we played it together because I missed that whole era because I was all about Halo. Halo was my thing. That's really why I bought the
Yeah,
Xbox
and you got your 360 after Halo 3 came out. So
after Halo
you
3 came
missed
out.
the like fill the gap with Gears of War era.
Exactly. So I
Yeah.
missed that. So I got it. But I did play Halo 3 and Halo 4 And no, Halo 5 came out on Xbox One. So I
Yeah,
played
and
Halo 3 and
ODST and
Halo.
Reach as well were
Yeah, I
360
played
games.
ODST. I didn't play Reach until later, but I played ODST. I played Halo 3 and I played Halo 4, all on this beautiful machine that we love. Oh man, just such a. This is a this episode is all nostalgia, but hey,
Yeah,
that's what it is.
yeah. And by the end of this generation too, I think Microsoft sort of started to slip. They got off to a really, really good start. They had some good games at the beginning, but then Sony figured out their strategy that they still use today, which is just have good games. And the beginning of that era, the PlayStation 3, the joke was PS3's got no games. Like that was a joke because it was true, right? There really wasn't anything amazing on the PS3 for a couple of years. I think from launch at least. So like Microsoft was able to get a lot of market share during that time when Sony was sort of stumbling, but then they figured it out and they did things like Last of Us and all those like their AAA narrative games that they
God
push
of
today.
War,
Yep.
Uncharted.
Yep. And they were able to pull it out. I think they eventually ended up outselling the 360. So I guess 360 lost that generation because the Wii destroyed everything. It's on another level.
Yeah, I think we all remember it being kind of like the Wii is just doing its own thing, and no
Yeah.
one talks about how dominant it was because, yeah, obviously it just crushed it. I mean,
Yeah,
your
it was
grandma
like
had a Wii, like
right.
everyone was playing it.
Yeah, it sold like twice as much as the other two consoles combined, like something insane like that. Like it was just we weren't comparing it because it was marketed towards a different group of people. It was truly Nintendo was like, we're gonna go off in this other direction. And maybe once in a while we'll have something for the core gamers. But mostly we're making this thing that is gonna be fun for kids and it's gonna be fun for people who don't normally play video games, which I think they were successful with.
Yeah,
To a certain extent.
You know what I might want to do, since we've talked about this before and how I have kind of a PlayStation deficit in my gaming library. There is a series that is now defunct that I would like to do an episode on. It's kind of weird on an Xbox 360 podcast that we're talking like the episode today that we're talking about this, but I would like to talk about Killzone. Remember Killzone?
Ooh, the Halo killer.
The Halo killer Killzone. Yes, and they made 3 of those, I believe.
They made
for
4
of them for PlayStation. They were first person
Yeah.
shooters, and I think that would be fun for us to cover sometime. This defunct series that is it is history now. I mean, I don't think they have any plans on bringing Killzone back, but this was Sony's potentially a Halo killer, like Tyler said. It was their version of it.
Yeah,
And
the PS2 one, they were definitely out here being like, this is better than Halo. Because everybody was like, well, what does Sony have that's better than Halo? You know?
and now, I mean, you could argue like Xbox is still struggling trying to keep up with this, trying to get these games, especially after Redfall was such a flop. Like they're trying to get like an exclusive that works. And I think that's why people are so pumped for E-Day to come out, Gears of War E-Day. And is the new Doom going to be exclusive?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think they had said as part of their acquisition of Activision, they were like anything that was that was multi-platform before will stay multi-platform, at least for like kind of the foreseeable future. But I wouldn't be surprised to see other things, new properties be exclusive.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things that it's funny how we're still having these conversations about games and stuff, and like having games is what sells consoles, and that's still a thing now. Although
That's it. Well, you can have the greatest, fastest, coolest machine in the world, but if it ain't got no games, like why would I buy it, right?
exactly.
I'm not here to use 512 gigabytes of RAM, right? I'm here to play Halo. So if you need 512 gigabytes of RAM to make a good Halo, fine, but that's not why I'm here, right?
That's right. And any unused RAM, it's just a waste.
That's true.
It's true.
Yep. I'm not here for teraflops. Doesn't matter to me how many teraflops your GPU has. I'm not using the teraflops. I just care that the developers can use those teraflops to make a fun game. That's all I care about is fun game.
We're not teraflop snobs, is what we're saying.
No, we're not. No, we're not. And so I always think it's funny when people compare like consoles, especially these days when they're like more or less the same thing. But like when they compare them, like this one's faster at that and this one's better at that. And like sometimes that's an interesting conversation, but like at the end of the day, it all just comes down to like, what does it mean better games? Does it mean a more fun game? Or does it not mean that? Because I don't care.
Exactly.
And I say that as a person who listens to the Digital Foundry podcast every week, where they don't talk about how games are fun. They talk about how good does the game look? What technology does it use? What resolution is it running at? I love that podcast.
Tyler's a real stats guy.
I am in terms of that. Like I find it interesting, but only because I just like computer hardware and stuff. But at the end of the day, it's like I'm not gonna buy a console based on its specs. I'm gonna buy like I want to play God of War. That's the spec that I need because I'm gonna buy a PlayStation for that because I can't do it on an Xbox, right?
Yep, exactly. And now, I mean, hey, you can play God of War on PC.
That's
Yeah,
true. Everything's coming to PC, baby. Everything.
it's the
I love
best.
it.
It's a good time to be alive. But yeah, sorry, I cut you off there. Anything else you want to talk about on 360?
I don't think so. I think that's kind of it. We just sort of wanted to wax nostalgic a little bit about an era that was like I said, I think very important to gaming as a whole. I also think that I have special nostalgia, and you do too as well, for this generation because while it was a pivotal time for hardware and gaming, the gaming culture in general, it was also like a pivotal time in my life where I was, like I said, this is when I sort of came online as a human. Like I got a job and bought my first Xbox 360. I was existing sort of independently to a certain extent at this time in my life. And so when I look back on that, on those like early days of like independence, when you like first get your driver's license and you're driving around, like all those like all that fun that you were able to have now that you were sort of detached from your parents, that's this time period in my life as well. So I just have a lot of nostalgia for the Xbox, and then mostly because of that time period. It's like GoldenEye, right? It's like when people say, "Oh, GoldenEye was so much fun." It's like you don't want to go back and play GoldenEye. You want to be 12 and playing GoldenEye with your friends in the basement. But it doesn't matter
Yeah.
what you're playing. You just want to be 12 playing games with your friends in the
And
basement.
I want to be 20 and I want to be passing a controller around at my friend's house in Pullman, Washington, playing Call of Duty again because it was
Yep.
just fun. And figuring out what kind of pizza we wanted. And that was really it. You know?
Yep. And playing System Link games in the dorm. I played through the
Oh
whole first
yeah.
Gears of War with some floor mates in the dorm. That was so fun.
It's a
Or
good
like,
thing. So
yeah.
this was kind of, this is a rest in peace Xbox online store. We'll
Maybe
miss
that
you.
Sarah McLachlan song.
We don't have the rights to that either, but it was a good time. Oh, we didn't even talk about this. The Xbox Live Arcade was a
Oh,
huge thing for indie games. It's what
yes.
put indie
It
games
made
on
indie games a thing. You're
consoles.
right. Wow, we missed a whole thing. You're totally right.
How could I do? I worked at an indie game marketing company for a year and a half. I was terrible at it, but I remember that.
Indie games are a thing because of the low-ish barrier to entry of the Xbox Live Arcade. I know they had a lot of restrictions in the beginning, like games could only be like 50 megabytes. They needed to be really small games, but they were so accessible to developers at the time. They put out a development kit that was easier for like hobbyist developers to make stuff for the 360. Very cool. And then not making it a requirement to put a game on a disc and sell it in a store, right? That there's so much overhead involved with that you can't just make a small, fun, little dumb game and put it on the shelf at Target because that's taking up space that another game could take up that, will sell better. But on the Xbox Live Marketplace, who cares? Put your $5 game up there,
Yeah, notable games: Peggle,
Mm-hmm.
Braid.
Braid.
Braid's big. Super Meat Boy.
Yep.
Those trial games I was talking about, Trials Evolution or Trials, like the challenge, they're the motorcycle game, kind of like
Yep.
Excite Bike. Those are all, I mean, Minecraft to some extent in the
Yeah.
beginning too was technically an indie game before
Yep.
Microsoft bought it, and it was on Xbox Game Store.
I love the
So
Penny Arcade Adventures games too. Those are on
Penny
Xbox
Arcade,
Live Arcade. Yeah.
yeah. So there were so many good games on there, and yeah, I just realized I'm like, if we missed that, that would have bummed me out so much
Yeah.
later. So the Penny Arcade, the Xbox 360 arcade program specifically. Also, you had the original Games with Gold program where you got free games.
Mm-hmm.
That was huge. You got 2 free games a month.
Yeah.
And they finally got rid of Games with Gold because of Game Pass. Like they see that there's no reason to have it both, but they kept that going for like a long time.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to say that came in a little bit more towards the end of the 360 lifespan, the free games with gold.
It did.
I can't remember if it was in response to something that Sony did, like maybe Sony started giving some games away.
I'm not sure,
I
but
think
it was
Sony started because Sony didn't charge for their online experience at the start. And they on the PS3. And still PS3 games can be played online without a subscription. If they still work. A lot of them don't work anymore because they didn't have quite the infrastructure that Microsoft had behind all of its games. But yeah, once they started charging for like the upgraded version of the PlayStation Network, I think that's when they started including a game or two a month for free, and then it was like, well, Microsoft, if you're going to charge as well, and basically require the charge because you couldn't even play multiplayer games online on
Yeah,
360
that was the
without
big
it.
part about it too.
They kind of had to do the games with gold thing to keep up.
For sure. Well, hey, it was great though. I
Yeah.
still actually was recently thinking because I was like, I've never played Dragon Age. And then I went on my Xbox and I got Dragon Age Origins as a Games with Gold game. I still own it.
Dang, got like a
So,
decade ago.
yeah. So I'm like, okay, I guess I could start it if I wanted to.
Yeah.
So there's that. But yeah, Xbox Live Arcade was such a good thing too. It's just so great. And I think we both wanted to kind of talk about it and how much we love it. Like Tyler said it all already, but that's the episode today. It was just kind of a fun. I might call this Mike and Tyler's Xbox 360 in memoriam episode.
Yeah. And if you want to send us emails and tell us like your memories of the Xbox 360 and like how much this generation meant to you, like please do, because like this is the generation I might be most nostalgic for, just because of the transitionary period for the industry. And then of course for me in my own life this was just like a pivotal time, for a lot of
For
people.
sure. Also, before we go today, we got a really amazing video message from a young listener. Maybe they view. I don't know. We have YouTube. We can say viewers now, technically.
That's true.
But they sent us a very good video with lots of points in it too about why we should cover Kirby specifically. And so I am moving that to the top of the list of things we talk about. So, and Tyler agrees.
Yeah, let's talk about some Kirby games.
So we're going to talk about, it might not be next week, it might be the week after, but we're going to talk about Kirby. And that's going to be the next thing we talk about on the podcast because we both don't have a lot of experience with Kirby.
Yeah, we need to play some Kirby games.
So we get to play some Kirby games together, but separately. And that's going to be exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. You know who you are, listener, that sent us the video. It was very nice. It was a very great video. So, all right. But with that, if you want to reach out to us, you can go to codexpodcast.net. That has all of our links on there, our Discord. If you want to join the Discord, you have to join the rules, accept the rules, and then everything shows up. You send us an email, codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. You can use the contact form on the website. Tyler, what you been playing, though, before we go, real quick?
Oh, Mario RPG, still slowly working my way through it. That's basically, and Destiny, of course, always playing Destiny right now these days. We'll see how long that continues for, but I'm still mostly in it. Not quite as much as I was when the expansion came out, but I'm still digging it. We got to do the new raid at least before we give up.
We do got to do the new raid. We'll do the new raid. We'll do it.
Yeah.
So
okay, that's it though. What about you?
I beat Dishonored. Great game. Loved it. I just kind of played it straight up as I normally would. I didn't try to do any sort of like pacifist or all kill run, and I got like a neutral ending, which felt right because I played it kind of neutrally. I did not kill almost all of the main targets except for the first one because I didn't know what to do, and I thought the poison switcheroo was funny, so I did that. But everyone else, I did like the non-violent way to get rid of them. So yeah, I would say it was great, and I want to play Dishonored 2, and I want to play Deathloop and some of those other Arcane games. We got some people talking about in the Discord recommending some of their Arcane games, so thank you for that. And with that, though, that's going to be it for the day. Tyler, would you like to say goodbye to everybody?
Goodbye, everybody.